Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. I'm sitting in Sephra's studio. What's up?
Just hanging out with you at the moment.
So the usual starting question is, what do you do?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I do a lot of things. I guess you could say my primary source of income right now is teaching at the University of Central Oklahoma, specifically the Academy of Contemporary Music, ACM at UCO.
Which is where I go.
Yes, which is where Santiago goes. And so that's kind of my primary source of income, but I don't necessarily, in some ways, consider it my primary thing that I do, if that makes sense. It is one of my primary things for sure. But I also make my own music and play gigs. And here in our studio, we record some local songwriters and artists and things like that just for kind of a flat fee. And then we also, Matt, my husband, and I own a independent record label, Schmo Records, and we do some stuff with that, including our own stuff, but also including at the moment only a couple of other songwriters. But we always have our ears open for stuff that we kind of both have a vision for. I'm also going to school, and I also teach private lessons out of my house to a few younger students. And I feel like there's more, but that's all I can think of at the moment.
Yeah. Also, right now you're doing a Schema project.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I normally put the plugs at the end, but it's also very relevant that I also am what would you call it, patron of the Schema project, I guess.
I don't know. I haven't come up with a name. Maybe I'll just call them minions or, I don't know, my constituents. I don't know.
Maybe some play on the word schema. I don't know.
There you go. Anyway, okay, we can brainstorm that later.
And I will say that, like, the music that you've put out from that is really good, and I really enjoy it. So, why music?
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. That's a big question. Okay. Well, I'll kind of explain a little bit about how I got into music, I guess, because that's part of the answer to that question. So I grew up in a very musical household. Both of my parents are excellent singers. My dad is a preacher, but he's also been in a lot of like gospel quartets and stuff like that. My mom, same kind of thing. She's not a preacher, but she's been in a lot of quartets and stuff. But my dad, when he was in high school, was always in choir, and he had actually like a rock band when he was in high school. And he went to college to study music, but decided to change his path partway through. My mom was in band mostly. She played clarinet, and then she started singing barbershop a lot, and she actually directed a barbershop chorus while she was pregnant with me, which, is kind of a joke in the family, like that, I just came out knowing how to sing barbershop or something. Yeah. But also we go to a Church of Christ, which in some ways our specific congregation is a little bit different than a lot of other ones, but in this way we are the same, which is that everyone thinks of it as like, well, what they say is the no music. Like, don't you guys not have music? It's like, well, we do have music. It's just different because everyone sings, and it's a cappella 4-part harmony, at least here in the US. Not everybody does that, but so I basically, from the time I was really born, was in that environment. Yeah. And I have no idea when I actually started participating in the singing. Most kids start participating, when they start kind of exploring speaking. Yeah. So around the same time. So I really don't know. But I remember specifically, like, one lady in church specifically kind of telling me whenever I was really young, like, hey, I really like hearing you sing. You know, you have such a pretty voice, you know, and just things like that. Just people kind of encouraging me. Yeah. And also my parents' interest in it. And my brother studied vocal music in college. My sister is the odd one that, you know, is a graphic designer. She's a visual artist. She's not as much
still art.
Into the music. Yes. But yeah, so I mean, I guess just being encouraged to do it really is what made me continue to do it. Yeah. And I always enjoyed singing and loved singing, but, you know, I guess it's different. You know, there are things I enjoy doing that I don't think I'm really that good at. But when someone tells you, hey, you're good at this, then it kind of makes you say, like, okay, well, you know, maybe there's a reason for me to continue kind of pursuing this. Yeah. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, that's kind of it, I guess. Yeah.
At what point, because I feel like every musician or artist kind of has to go through a point where they go, well, what am I going to do with my life that, you know, is a real job, you know? And so at what point did you go, like, I can't have a real job. I have to do music.
Well, about junior year in high school, that's okay. So first of all, the other thing I was going to say was that my parents did have me be a part of this talent show when I was like 2, I think, and get up in front of everyone and sing by myself. And I was really scared, but I wanted to do it, and I did it. And that's part of it too, like just that experience of like being like, okay, I'm totally okay in front of people, you know. But anyway, your question was, like when did I decide not to have a real job, or if I did make that decision consciously? When I was junior year in high school, I remember that being the year that I decided I wanted to be an audio engineer, specifically. I studied, actually, when I went, the high school I went to, Classen School of Advanced Studies, you actually have a major, even though you're in high school. So I studied vocal music even then. But I don't know. I never really thought having a real job was like a real thing, like that you had to do that. I think just because, like, my dad was a preacher, so primarily, at least the way our church works, like, he doesn't have an office in the church or something that he goes to. He basically is at home and he studies his butt off all the time. Yeah. And my mom was a realtor, and so she made her own schedule. Yeah. So I had no conception of like a 9-to-5 job at all. It was just like, you know, you do this, like you do something that you like and it makes you enough money to go on. So I kind of always thought of it that way. Yeah. But my parents at one point thought I should be like a teacher. Sure. Like I should go to school for that. And I kind of fought against that. I was like, you know, I don't think I would be a good teacher. I'm not very patient and, you know, whatever. I'm an avid reader, but sometimes can be impatient with, you know, people talking about silly things that don't matter or whatever. I don't know. I can be impatient sometimes, or with people that don't understand certain concepts. But so I didn't think I would be a good teacher. And I don't know. I knew I wanted to do something within music, I guess. I mean, when I was singing barbershop professionally, I guess I kind of just assumed, like, obviously you can make money off of this. Like, what's the big deal? You know, I never thought of it.
So there was never even really like, I have to get a real job. This was your life.
Yeah. I mean, I did get a normal job for a while there to pay off my student loans and, you know, stuff like that. And just to kind of pay the bills for a little bit. But, and Matt was going to school. So I had to kind of, you know, we both had to kind of work to make that work. But yeah, I mean, I never saw that as a permanent thing. In fact, the whole time I was really anxious about it becoming a permanent thing. I was like, this is not what I had planned. Like, can we get through this ASAP? Yeah. So teaching is more like a real job, but it's still very different from an oil company finance job where you do the same thing all day, every day, you know, number checking or whatever, which I was not bad at. I just despised
it's just not
it. So
what you want to be doing.
right. Yeah, exactly.
And so, at least from the start, what was your goal? Like, everyone sort of has the, like, big dream of, you know, did you want to become a big famous singer, or was it just...
Well, no, I never wanted to become a big famous singer, I don't think. I've always kind of thought, like, I could see myself doing that, but do I want to do that? Not really.
Yeah.
But one of my goals was to create my own record label. Ta-da!
There you go.
It might be tiny, but it's here. And to have a record label that kind of has just creative music, but also in a way, you know, with my particularly kind of religious background, I wanted music that people could listen to with their families and feel totally comfortable, but is actually still really creative and makes you think, which is kind of hard to come across in a weird way. Like, you know, I don't know. I at one point I really wanted to provide that. Now it's less maybe about that as much as just kind of, you know, us being able to help, newer artists who are starting out and give them kind of a leg up and give them great recordings to go out with.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of my goals. And at one point I really wanted to be like, you know, just an engineer at a big studio or whatever. Not that I would still be opposed to that, but you know, at this point I'm really happy with our studio. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's really, I kind of thought like, oh, I'll just be an engineer at a studio as my full-time job.
Yeah.
And, you know, whenever I went into college it was like 2007. So it was like when the industry was really starting to tank. And it just became a reality as I was going through school that like, you know, the jobs for engineers in studios, like full-time 40-hour week jobs are really on the decline. And that's in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
Where there are a lot of studios. And there's this huge pool of people who have all been trained and who all have all this experience. So, you know, it's like one of the guys that I worked with out there that engineered some of my stuff, he was an intern, an unpaid intern at a really good studio for I don't know how long. I think it was, I want to say like 8 months. And he was just like, he like slept there some nights.
Yeah.
Like he just was there all the time. But then he got offered a job as like a head engineer there, which is an amazing job because like it was one of the biggest studios in Nashville. But at the same time, he got offered a job from like a little studio like this.
Yeah.
A guy that was making enough money off of his little home studio kind of thing to actually pay him for 40 hours a week of work.
Yeah.
And he could have a lot more creative say.
Exactly.
And he was like, yep, I'm taking that one. So, you know, sometimes that big dream of like, oh, I just want to have a really secure like 40-hour week paycheck at this nice studio is really, you know, like that was kind of my idea. But what I've come out with, I think is at this point, I think I'm way happier with the way I have things going now than I ever was. I also did, I talk a lot, sorry.
Go for it.
I also did, recently I remembered that my mom had brought this up when I first started teaching at ACM, which is my quartet was interviewed for the Daily Oklahoman when I was like in high school. And they asked me, what do I want to do when I get older or whatever. And I said, teach college. And I don't remember that necessarily being a big goal of mine, but, you know, I guess at one point it was in my brain.
Yeah.
So here I am.
With the whole record label thing, what is it that sort of drives you to be more of like a beacon for the smaller artists rather than trying to flock towards, you know, a bigger, more secure job? But
yeah. To me, music is, I don't know. Music is, okay, this is very subjective. Music is maybe very often seems to be better or more creative, I should say, when it's not driven by the size of the fan base or the amount of money coming in. So, not that people who do really creative things can't have huge fan bases.
Sure.
But, you know, one thing that someone mentioned to me once that I thought was really kind of profound in a very simple way was, you know, if you look at the Beatles, right, like they made great pop songs, but they are kind of an exception to this rule. They didn't care. Like they made the weirdest stuff ever too. Like, you know, they did everything. They did all their weird, wild ideas. They just went for it, you know? They're like, especially, you know, after they'd already gotten some clout or whatever, they're like, we can do whatever we want, you know? And some of their stuff is just, I mean, it's almost like funny how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's really the beauty in creativity and in art in a lot of ways is like being able to not have to take it like a life or death, you know, like if you take it as like, okay, if I create this, will people like it? And if they won't like it, then I can't do it or I have to alter it in some way. You know, to me, it loses something a lot of the time when that's the goal. So, you know, we like to support artists who are being creative already and help them to get their creativity out there. Yeah. But our goal is never to make them a giant fan base, you know, and most of them know that, you know, a lot of the artists that I think they all know that, you know, the couple of artists that we have, we're kind of straightforward with them. Like, you know, we'll help you with whatever you need. We'll guide you. You know, if you want to do some marketing, we'll split the cost with you and we'll help you get that done. But ultimately, you know, our goal is to just give you something as a tool. And not to necessarily make you into some superstar. You know, that's just, I don't know. That's just also, it's just not our, you know, having that superstar thing going on isn't even really that beneficial for a lot of artists. You know, like, you know, being with us and having us take, you know, give you your recording for free, which is what we do for the artists who are on our label. You know, we record them for free and we split any other costs and we get 50% of the profit straight down the middle. Sure. And that's a lot better deal than what they would have with a major label. And they're not going to sell that much with us. But, you know, it's kind of like you have control over what you're doing. And I don't know. I never saw that as appealing. I don't know. I never... I can understand how people would be drawn to being a big artist. But to me, the only appealing part is that I'm a super extrovert and I love all the people, and big crowds make me feel much more comfortable than small crowds and things like that. But it's not about, you know, the money or something like that. I don't need a giant house or a fancy car. It's like, that doesn't bring actual joy to anyone's life, really. I don't think so. I don't know.
So what do you feel is the best creativity, or what sort of environment creates the best sort of creativity?
I don't know.
This whole thing is just difficult question after another. I know.
I love it. I love it. It's hard questions, but I mean, the reason why that's hard to answer is because I think it's different for every person. You know, for us, for example, we love having this studio here just because of the fact that you have an idea and it strikes you and you have all the tools to get it out, you know, to just get it down in the moment instead of having to, you know, plan out a studio session and pay for it and all this stuff. You just go in and you, bam, there it is.
Exactly.
Which is really nice. I think it's good to have the tools there. I also I do a lot of creative writing too. And that's the same thing, you know, if I don't have a notebook with me, I feel so insecure because, like, what if I have an idea and I don't have the tools I need to just save it? Yeah. And so to me, that's a big part of it. But at the same time, limitations in the tools that you have are part of what, can really create or help along the creative process. One of our artists, Megan, I've told you this, I think, in class before, but, she didn't have any recording software at one point, and she just put her earbuds in and used her microphone on her earbuds to record a song like at 4:00 in the morning. And even though that was a very limited way of recording it, we got it and we said that's it. That's the take.
Yeah.
We can't get a better take, because if we brought it into this kind of studio, somewhat professional kind of environment, that take is not going to come out. Yeah. Whereas it could come out in kind of that limited environment where she didn't feel any pressure. She didn't have this fancy microphone in front of her, So I guess the short answer is, I don't know. Depends.
I feel like there's a perception of like a magic in the creativity or in the take. And I mean, obviously, since it's sort of what we focus on and sort of try and make our entire living off of, it's sort of difficult not to just analyze it to death.
Right.
But I mean, where does it become like, this is the magic and this is the stuff that's necessary to make a good thing?
I'm not sure if I entirely understand your question.
Well, I mean, I guess it's less of a question, but just like a starting topic. That, you had mentioned that limitation creates a sort of springboard towards making something good. And I think I had this sort of thing recently that, like at 2 a.m, like the rest of a song hit like earlier that day. And I just, I have to get up now and finish this song.
Right.
But I find myself a lot of the time maybe just forcing an idea out.
Gotcha. I see what you mean.
So like, which of your things that you've made, or at least with other artists, has been more successful in your own regard, but more successful in the sense of whether it was creative magic or whether it was a structured plan?
Well, here's the interesting kind of viewpoint that I take on it, which is, I think the creative kind of natural outflowing is usually the best stuff. But I think, and I don't know, this is totally just philosophical. In my mind, it seems like the more you practice and kind of force yourself to just get into the habit, the more that stuff flows out. In other words, when I'm in a period, kind of like a dry spell or whatever, and I'm not writing a lot of music, if I don't make myself write it, if I don't make myself sit down and try to write, then nothing comes out. Almost never does anything just come out. I mean, I shouldn't say almost never, like maybe once a month, some idea will hit me and I'll record something. But if I don't force myself to kind of sit down and play with it, or, or at least try to write something when I'm not feeling it, then that stuff either doesn't come out or it doesn't get recognized, if you will. Like, maybe it'll come out, but I'm not really focused on that. So I kind of ignore the fact that, I had a good idea, but like I'm focused on something else. So it doesn't get acknowledged and doesn't ever really get worked on. And at the same time, I also think, recently I wrote a song I'll be releasing on the Schema project like in, I think, January. And so I recently wrote a song that the idea struck me in kind of one of those magic moments, and a couple of different ideas within the song did, but I still had to work to make it all work. I still had to force myself to kind of sit down and play with it. And that's really what I do most of the time is I just play with it. You know what I mean? It's just the practice of sitting yourself in front of an instrument or your notebook or whatever and just being like, okay, you know, come on, strike me, magic, you know, sometimes you just have to ask the magic to strike you, if you will. You know, you have to kind of say, I'm giving you a place now, like, come out wherever you are, you know, and sometimes it just happens. Or sometimes you mess around and everything sucks and, you know, you leave and you're like, well, that sucks. And then the next day the magic strikes you because your brain was working on it. It's kind of that idea of like, you know, you consciously work on a problem that you're trying to solve, and then you go away from it, and the answer strikes you. Yeah. Because your brain is kind of in the background or whatever doing things. I don't know if that really has any scientific merit or not. But I have read some books by psychologists that give some ideas like that, so I assume that maybe it does.
So would your, not necessarily goal, but would you rather have like a full sort of catalog of magical moments, or would you rather have a whole lot of, you know, sort of structured works?
Well, I think we'd all like to feel like whatever we create is magic moments, even if we did have to force the magic to happen or whatever. But although you can't really, I don't know if you can force it, but you can sit down and wait for it, like I said. But yeah, I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter to me how the process occurred if the listener is affected. If some listener somewhere is affected in a positive way by it, to me it doesn't matter. You know, something that I think was forced is sometimes something that someone has a deep emotional reaction to. Sure. You know, it's like, I mean, I've written songs entirely not about myself at all and that don't really have super strong emotional ties to me personally, that other people get, you know, in a deep way or feel in a deep way. So I would, as long as it can affect someone somewhere, I don't care.
And I guess that kind of brings me to this next thought that came up, but in a way, who are you making the art for? Like, is it for you to creatively express yourself, or is it for whoever listens to it?
That's a really good question. And for me, I think it really is, a lot of it is for the other person. And in that way, it's not, obviously I already expressed my ideas about wanting super huge fan bases and things like that. It's not about that. It's just that idea of affecting that one person in a positive way. It's really for them. Although I really enjoy the process. If it was just for me, I'm not motivated to make music for myself, really. I mean, I'll do it if I happen to, you know, be in a situation or if I happen to have an idea strike me, but I'm not motivated to really put kind of a lot of manual labor, if you will. Sure. Not really. Musicians don't do a lot of manual labor, but not, you know, I'm not really motivated to do the hard work that it takes to finish something, unless I think it's going to have an effect on someone.
Sure.
So,
well, yeah, I think I keep bringing it up, especially with the musicians that I talk to, is that there does have to be a level of, you know, wanting to affect other people, and to that same extent, having some sort of like ego to be able to think, I think I'm good enough to come into your life and influence you in that way.
Yeah, but I see that, yes. But I also think everyone is good enough. Not necessarily with music, but I think every single person that you interact with, has the ability to affect you in some way. And hopefully it's in a positive way. And, you know, that's kind of all I can hope for is, and most of the time, you know, most of my interactions are not musical, especially being a teacher. No pressure, right? Being a teacher is a lot of pressure because you know that you're probably going to have an impact on some of these students.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, please let it be positive. I'm really trying here. But, you know, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, it's not that I'm special because I can affect people. It's like, no, you can absolutely affect me, even if you are horrible at music. And there are plenty of people who even create music that I don't think are necessarily great at music, but they still affect me, you know, and in a positive way. And yeah, I don't know.
I think I have like 2 more questions on this whole thing, but not on the whole podcast, but like this topic.
Yeah. Okay.
There is sort of a level of also not necessarily with music, but with most art in general, of wanting to show everyone you know, the like child that draws something and runs to their mom and goes, "Hey, look, I made this."
Yeah.
And maybe that's just like a curse of being somewhat of an extrovert.
Yeah.
Who do you want to, like, who do you initially just go, "I made this, I want to show it to you"?
Yeah, that's, okay. You ask a lot of hard questions, but I like it. Well, I actually, in a weird way, so, I'm an extrovert, but, in my actual thought process and my kind of emotions and my opinions about things, I'm a little more introverted. I like to talk about ideas.
Yeah.
But I don't always feel as comfortable sharing my personal things. So, it's really hard for me actually to show people who I care what they think about me.
Yeah.
People who know me. People who don't know me are the people who I want to show, as bad as that is. And that's actually something with the Schema project, that's kind of what I'm trying to, in a way, overcome, is, you know, this idea of like, you know, oh, I'm putting out my music so all these strangers can hear it, which is totally fine. And it's really beautiful in its own way because you're affecting these people you wouldn't affect otherwise.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm trying to be a lot more comfortable having close relationships and sharing my actual feelings and opinions with people who I'm close to, because my problem is, you know, I care like not at all what people think of me who I don't know.
Exactly.
And so I can literally get up in front of thousands of people and have no problem at all.
Exactly.
That's so comfortable for me. But when you get me into a room with a few people, that makes me really uncomfortable. So I guess in a weird way, I was just trying to think, because I was thinking like, well, would I show Matt first, my husband? And then I was like, well, I would want to show him, but at the same time, I would be kind of afraid of what he thinks, because I care so much about what he thinks more than anyone. And so that's really hard for me to show him a new song that I've written, because I'm like, what if he thinks it's bad, you know? And the same is true of my family. You know, my parents, you know, I always kind of preface a song by saying like, some of my songs are about me and some of my songs are not about other people, or are not about me and are about other people. So just kind of keep that in mind, because I don't want them to necessarily know whether a song is about a personal experience, you know? And I think that's really pretty unhealthy, but I guess, you know, really my instinct is to share it with strangers. So that's, I don't know, kind of odd. And I'm kind of limiting myself to not do that right now. For the sake of trying to have like a healthier view on close relationships and be okay with it.
And then the other part, since voice has been such a important part of your life, what is it about the voice that makes it different from an instrument and all the, training that you still do in voice as you would in any other instrument? But what is it that from voice that separates it for you?
For me, the difference, I guess, is that my voice is, well, there are a lot of differences in my mind, but one is that my voice is literally a part of me. So, and as a part of that, and as a part of my upbringing too, I use my voice very instinctively. I don't, even though I have technical training and things like that, I don't think about things like that most of the time when I'm singing, because I don't feel the need to, unless I feel like I can't exactly, get something across the way I want to, then I'll think about technique. But 9 times out of 10, my voice as a part of me, I know it so well and I feel so comfortable with it. Yeah. It's always been there, like it's always been there. And ever since I was, born, I started using it, even if it was just to scream, or cry or whatever. But I've been using it. And so it just, I don't know, to me it feels very different than playing the guitar. I love my guitar. I feel a very deep connection to my guitar also. Yeah. But my voice is just a totally different thing. It's like, it's, never going to leave me kind of thing. And it might get harmed or whatever, but, it's like, this is a part of me and I know exactly what to do with it and how to express what I want to express with it. And I don't have to worry about, as weird as this sounds, I don't have to worry about it malfunctioning. A lot of people worry about their voices malfunctioning. If my voice malfunctions, I feel no weirdness about it, because it's like, that is part of me and it's part of my body and it reacts to different things differently. And if it malfunctions, that's just kind of an expression of what's happening in my body, and I have no problem with it, Sure. Like versus a guitar, it's like, oh, that's a reflection on my skill, which sure. Singing can be. I mean, people can mess up because their skills aren't where they should be, but I feel very comfortable with that. I just feel like, if it malfunctions, I'm using my skills to the best of my ability, and sometimes that just happens. So,
and sort of bridging that, as difficult as it can be for me to try to bridge this into, what do you believe?
Oh, okay. I knew that was coming. I think you asked this to a lot of your guests. Well, what do I believe? Okay, what do you mean? I'll make this hard on you.
About the world. How do we exist in it, and what is important about it to you?
Oh, okay. Okay. That's good. Okay. So in terms of a higher power, you probably know already that I definitely believe in that. And I have a little bit, to me, it's an odd viewpoint in the academic world to have, which is that I believe that there is some evidence that there is a God. And I believe that there is some evidence that the Bible is divinely inspired. I don't believe there is irrefutable evidence or that it removes all doubt. And I take the approach that, God gave us our brains and our minds for a reason, and we're supposed to use it to make deductions. If there is a God, I believe that he did that, and I believe there is a God. And so I don't believe in this kind of blind faith thing at all. But I do believe that, there's some evidence for that, and purposefully there's not enough to remove all doubt so that it is truly a choice. And so that's kind of my belief about that. And the reason why I really have to mention that is because my morality essentially comes from the Bible.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, my views come from there. And I mean that truly being from the Bible, not from like some guy telling me how I'm supposed to read the Bible. Or I guess I try to make that true. I mean, it's hard to not be influenced by what other people think, of course, but I try to kind of really read it for what it is.
Yeah.
And take it as that. And, of course I have the instinctual kind of values that, to someone who believes in God, I think they're God-given also,
Sure.
our conscience and all that. But really, primarily, although I have those instinctual values, I kind of put more trust even in actually the Bible. So
Yeah.
I know it's like I said, I feel that I'm in the majority, or not in the majority at all, but I feel like there's a lot of people who believe something kind of similar to that in like Oklahoma, but in the world of academia, I feel very, especially in the world of musicians and academia, I feel pretty kind of a little isolated there. Although there are other people that I know definitely who kind of have similar views, but
Yeah. How do you live that out?
okay. Like, what does that mean in real life, right? That means, oh, sheesh. That means a lot of things, That means treating other people like you'd like to be treated, kind of the golden rule kind of thing. Okay, so I've been watching a lot of The Walking Dead. Maybe that's not something I don't know. This is kind of a weird way to bring it in, but, this, one of the guys on there, one of the things he learns outside of kind of Christianity is that all life is precious.
Morgan.
Yes, Morgan.
I'm caught up on Walking Dead, so you're good.
Yes. And I absolutely, believe that. And I think that's something that is taught in the scripture. And a lot of people create problems based on religion and don't treat other people well because of their beliefs and things like that. To me, that totally doesn't jive with what's actually there.
Yeah.
That's really following the emotional leadership of someone who's mad generally, or someone who has some sort of issue. But I believe everyone should be treated well and everyone should be treated as equally important.
Yeah.
Every single person is equally important. And I'm trying to think of, other specific things. I mean, from those giant concepts down to, specific things like, yeah, I go to church every single Sunday morning and we have, communion where we all partake together, and I have extra long hair that I've never cut, and a lot of that, that's more specific stuff that comes from kind of those wider concepts of treating other people well, and like with the church, being like a family and helping each other, to make sure that we're all kind of, doing those, living those big concepts, hopefully, and yeah, I don't know.
And it's also really difficult to extend that out to people outside of your like church family or even within just like acquaintances. But since the Bible does say to love everyone,
yes.
How do you deal with that part of?
Oh, that's a great question.
People are jerks sometimes.
Yeah. The answer is that's really, really hard. One thing that I personally really try to do is see the best in every person I meet, or see the potential of their goodness, like, even though you're treating me really badly, that doesn't mean that you can't be good, like, I don't believe in the death penalty ever, because I always think there's the possibility, however remote it might be, that person could change and become a good person.
Of course.
So that's part of it, is just every person you meet kind of seeing as much positive as I can in them. But then as it extends to the entire world, that becomes a giant issue that's really, hard. Because, you can give to charities and you can, go and help people.
Yeah.
But you can't help everyone personally. So, I guess the way that I tend to kind of live that out is to, when I have an opportunity to do something good and I can for someone and to help someone,
of course,
I should take it.
Yeah.
And if I see someone being treated poorly, I should try to help them. Or if I see someone, in a bad situation, I should try to help them. To the extent that I can, do whatever I can for people. And I know that there's always more I could do, though. So that's kind of, that's the hard thing about it. And I also think loving other people really does, it means, as a Christian, I do think, it's important to believe in God and be saved and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So part of that for me is, trying to help people see that.
Yeah.
But it's not forcing someone to do anything ever, because, that, again, like, that kind of idea just doesn't work with the Bible. Like, why do you think God gave people free choice? Like, there is a point to this. It wasn't, he didn't say, oh, everyone can have free choice, now you go force them for me. Like, that's not right at all. That makes no sense. And so, that's a struggle for me too, to figure out, do I really just, the best thing I can do sometimes is just treat people well, and if people have questions about, my religion or my beliefs or whatever, to answer them honestly. And, but it's hard because, sometimes there are times where it's like, well, maybe I should bring it up. But I also absolutely disagree with the idea of forcing your ideas on other people. So, it's hard to kind of know where to draw that line of when to talk about it and when to not talk about it.
Yeah.
Because, I do love people and I want to see them go the way that I think is right. But reality is, they think something else is right. So, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is just a difficult quandary of being told to evangelize.
Yeah.
In what ways do you, you don't necessarily have to, go out there and be like, hey, love Jesus or whatever.
Right.
But in what ways in your life do you sort of consider it evangelizing?
Well, I mean, I don't know if the word evangelize is actually used in the Bible. It might be, but like I said, I try to draw all my beliefs from the Bible. But the Bible does say to, it definitely presents the idea of like going out and telling people. Of course, during the days of the Bible, Jesus, like, there were a lot of people who like genuinely hadn't heard of this guy.
Yeah.
Whereas at this point, most people have heard of it and kind of know some things. So, for me, a lot of it is really just like a lot of that big picture moral stuff of just like treating people right and trying to do the right thing and, doing those, as weird as it seems, sometimes like my super long hair is a way that people just see like, that's interesting. And like, why do you do that? And when I tell them like, oh, well, the Bible says it. And like, I actually kind of take it seriously, sometimes that's just a turning point where, just acting that way and people realizing that that's why you're doing that, it just makes people kind of go like, So there are people who like actually take the Bible seriously
Yeah.
and not just like follow some guy because he's some guy or whatever, you know. And some people totally think it's really silly to follow the Bible, and I get that too, because there are some weird things in it, right? But like at the same time, just people seeing that like there's someone who does that to that extent, kind of sometimes it kind of just makes them think. And that's really what I try to do, you know. That's really the way, I guess, that I, if you would call it evangelize, is that I just try to make people think. You know, because I cannot have the thought process for someone, and I can't force someone into a thought process, and I have no desire to. But what I do have the desire to do is to make sure that people think about it and maybe reconsider, you know, like maybe you think again about it and maybe you look at it a little bit more in a little deeper level or in a different way. And maybe that leads you, you know, into a certain path, or I don't know. So I have a very loose form of evangelism, I guess. But, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think God ever meant for me to make everyone else's decisions for them. So, yeah.
In what ways is your belief characterized in your music?
Ooh, this is okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something I'm very interested in myself. Because my views, I almost never try to like put a view into my music, but I do have this kind of overarching idea of trying to, again, like influence people in a positive direction with my music. But it's very kind of loose because a lot of times it's that magic, you know, it's like, ooh, that just came out, you know. But a lot of it ends up revolving around some of these ideas. That come from my spiritual experience. Like, you know, I have several songs like about the idea of repentance, for example, just like the idea of like, I did something wrong. And like, in fact, I have an idea or a song kind of about like hardening of the heart. It's like, you know, saying like, I did it again, you know, and like, I don't know how to, I can't undo it, but like, you know, it just explains, like, I kind of had this unhealthy thought process and I just kept doing something I knew was wrong. And like, you know, eventually my heart kind of grew hard to it and I didn't know how to like get back to the right place. And so I kind of, you know, went through that process a little bit through my song of kind of like getting myself back to the right place. And so, a lot of my songs totally have nothing in particular to do with my faith, I guess, although everything kind of ties into it in some way. But some of my songs really do. I mean, a lot of my songs are, you know, about the kind of guilt and repentance and, you know, the good stuff too. but a lot of times the bad stuff is what inspires, you know, like the bad experiences or the, you know, melodramatic kind of sadness we get into. But yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of how it manifests itself is, you know, sin and repentance and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't know. So that's part of why my music is particularly scary for me to share with people who I love, is because not only is it like really personal, it's also like really personal and often about stuff that I've done wrong. You know, it's like, I don't really want to tell you about this, but like at the same time, it's healthy to, you know, kind of say, yes, I do wrong things. Like, you know, I don't know.
Do you have a desire for having other people agree with your views?
That's a weird question. I have that desire only in that because I personally believe that my views are correct, which I think pretty much is the case with everyone, right? Like, otherwise that's not your view.
Yeah.
So because I personally view that, like, okay, what I think is what I think,
Mm-hmm.
then in that way, you know, I kind of have a desire for other people to agree with me because I want them to be right with God, if you will. But I don't just have some sort of like desire just that people agree with me, just random. If that makes sense, like it's not that I want to be in the same bucket with someone or something. You know, it's not that I want us to be on the same level or them to think more like me. In fact, I very much love the diversity of views. That's really something like I can just, in fact, it drives my husband insane because every time he like gets really passionate about something and is like, oh, this is the way it should be, blah, 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 I immediately hop to the other side, whether or not I agree with him, because I just enjoy seeing different perspectives.
Exactly.
And that's why I created the Schema Project. It's all about everyone seeing each other's perspectives. I think that's so, so important. But I also think that's important in kind of really honing in on what the truth is, you know what I mean? And so, I guess, you know, in my ideal world, we would all share our perspectives completely transparently, and we would find the true truth to its very finest detail.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not reality. So, you know, I guess I do desire to agree with people on what the truth is, but I don't just desire that they come to my side. I just desire that we know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just wish that we could all kind of like be enlightened in a way, you know? Like I just wish we would all just know, you know? But that's really not the case, and it's kind of the beauty of life, right? That we don't all just know. But it's hard because I desire everyone to have different perspectives, but I also desire that everyone be in the best possible place, which for me is, I believe, you know, the best place is to be saved and have a relationship with God and all of that.
Exactly.
So it's like, yes, I desire that, but I don't just desire that they just agree with me just because, you know? I don't know. I desire it for their welfare. At least that's my philosophy, you know.
What's the road to getting to that sort of common understanding?
You're really bringing out the big guns here. Okay. Well, here's what the road to getting to the understanding or like to agreeing. Oh, sheesh. Okay, so like, because everything kind of hinges on my belief in God and my belief in the Bible, right? So because I believe in the Bible, and the Bible says those who seek the truth will find it, that's it, right? Like, if someone is truly seeking the truth and not kind of involving or trying not to involve their own ego, because that's oftentimes a big obstacle in us seeing the truth in anything, right? It's like, oh, I'm like the best at this, or like, you know, that person sucks at that, or it's so often that's like our ego talking. We don't really see what's actually there in front of us. So, you know, if people are really seeking the truth genuinely, hopefully without, you know, as much as they can without kind of an agenda, if you will, then it will be found.
Yeah.
So, so that's also part of why I really don't try to force my beliefs on anyone, is because, you know, I kind of think if I'm doing what I think is right, and if someone else is really seeking the truth, then they'll find it, and I might be a part of that.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to make sure it's available, but my job isn't to force it down their throats. My job is to make it available, you know? So,
sort of digressing and sort of not.
Okay.
What is the value of a person to you?
Okay. Immeasurable. The value of a person, I mean, I don't really, I mean, you can't quantify it.
Yeah.
I'm really at a loss on this one because like, I mean, what I value in a person, if we want to take it there,
Sure.
which is a little different, what I value in a person, of course, you know, I value their soul, whatever that kind of amorphous thing is. I value their personality and everything, you know, like that. I don't really know how to. I don't know. I think everything about a person is valuable. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, you answered it immediately. So, what?
Okay, I answered it and then I tried to overcompensate.
Yeah. Well, it's fine. Like, so going off of that, like, what do you value most of people?
What do I value most? I don't know. You know, I mean, I mentioned their soul, but that's a really weird thing to say because, like, I don't really know how to value a soul. That's just kind of, that's more of a thing that, like, I'm like, I feel like I should say that, but I don't exactly really know what that means. But I mean, okay, so things that I value, I guess, in terms of like my natural instincts, because at the moment I can't seem to find a logical answer to this horrifying question that you've asked me. So I really like to find logical answers, but I can't come up with one at the moment. So my instinctual answer is that although I think it is really silly, I value intelligence a lot. But I don't think I've been trying to make myself not value that as much because I think, you know, if someone's super dumb or super smart, they both are of equal value, really. And I also tend to value honesty. And that one I'm a little bit more okay with, like transparency and honesty. I just think I guess I don't value that necessarily as like a trait of a person, like, oh, you're dishonest by nature. That's not really a thing to me. I just kind of think I value people making the effort to be transparent or to be honest. I just think if we were all more transparent and honest with each other, I think a lot of things would just be okay. Like, you know, a lot of things are kind of dramatized and become this huge deal, but reality is, right, if whatever you think that you said out loud to me that no one ever says out loud to me, if more people just said it, then it wouldn't be such a big deal. Like, it would be like, oh, that person, you know, thinks that outfit I chose is the ugliest thing they've ever seen, but I've heard that 500 times, so like, you know, whatever, you know, if we really knew what each other were thinking. So I don't know. I guess that's not exactly maybe what you were asking, but that's the best I can do.
If I can encroach upon what your answer would be, at least from what I've gotten from what you've been saying, is I think you also value people's perspectives.
Yes.
And their creativity.
Yes, I do. I do value those two things as well. And again, like with the creativity thing, it's kind of this almost a similar thing to the intelligence. It's like, I do value that, but at the same time, like, I really believe that someone who is not creative at all has just as much value as someone who isn't. But at the same time, you know, I also believe that people who say they're not creative at all totally have the capability to be creative. Like, that's just a lie. You just don't know. Which maybe that's me wanting them to think what I think, but I don't know.
Okay. Actual last question.
Okay.
What advice do you have for people?
Have a lot of advice. That's why I'm a teacher. Well, I mean, going off of kind of our discussion of my faith, since that's kind of the central thing for me, I guess I would have to say if I had to narrow it down, it would be to continue searching for the truth. Continue searching for whatever truth you're kind of searching for. Continue looking for it.
Yeah. Awesome. And so plug your things.
What?
Plug your things.
Oh, my things.
Where can we find you and your music and all the things you do?
Okay, so the Schema Project is like my biggest thing right now, and you can find that at Schmo Records. That's SHMOE, schmorecords.com. And you can put in /Sephra if you want. That's where that will be constantly hosted, but right now schmorecords.com just goes straight there. And just so you kind of know, the way that works is you sign up for $5, and for that $5 you get 12 months worth of 2 pieces of content every month. So like every month I put out a produced, finished song, and then I also put out something else. Sometimes it's artwork, sometimes it's poetry, sometimes it's a video of me playing something live. It could be all kinds of things, but it's exclusive to those people. Like I said, kind of building that community, that those like closer kind of relationships with my fans. And so that's that. So
real quick.
Yeah.
I'm a patron of that, and it is quality content, and it's also like a good environment to sort of discuss. I know you encourage a lot of discussion.
Absolutely.
And so to sort of absorb the content and also talk to people, and I would also encourage the people who participate in that to discuss as much as they want.
Yes, thank you, Santiago. That's a great point that I just kind of forgot. Sometimes I forget to mention like a huge part of the project is like that idea. That's the whole reason behind the name. But anyway, you can read more about that if you join. But it's really about people sharing their perspectives. So I'm really actually excited because I think we're going to put this podcast into the Schema Project,
yes.
Which will be great because this is another avenue. This podcast is another avenue where people kind of get the chance to really share their perspectives and talk about things. And so, yeah, my encouragement is for everyone in the project to discuss their own perspective and their own ideas about things so that we can all share it and hopefully, find some of those little bits of truth within our discussions, if that makes sense. So that's that. Don't be afraid of it. It's like really $5 straight up, and that's it. And it's a little weird and it's a little unique, but I like to do weird things. And so just join me. Weird things are good a lot of the time, right? Right. Yeah. So, and that's, other
it's
than
also
that,
a cheap album, like
right.
$5
for like 24 things, 12 songs plus 12 other things.
Yeah, some
of which will be more songs. That's my plan anyway. So there's that, and then I'm trying to think, other things to plug. I guess. I'm a teacher at ACM, but there's not really anything to plug there except come to ACM because it rocks. It's really cool. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Come visit us at least, I
also do a lot of shows and stuff. And,
yes, the Performance Lab. And you can find all that stuff acmuco.edu, and then there's like a Facebook page for ACM at UCO. And you can, if you just like search it up, you'll find everything. Yep. I also have a Facebook page for my music. It's just Sephra Music, like facebook.com/Sephra Music, which SEPHRA, weird name. And Schmo Records has one too. I think it's just Schmo Records. I guess other than I could tell you guys, since we've talked a lot about religion, I might as well just tell you, the church I go to, Whispering Pines Church of Christ, we have a revival type of thing coming up, October 20, I don't know, the weekend of fall break. And we got a really good speaker that, I think has a pretty balanced, loving kind of approach to things, and a logical but a very compassionate approach. And I really like him. So if you want to come out, wpcoc.church. There's a bunch of information there. If you so desire to, just, even if you just want to come hear, 100 people sing a cappella 4-part harmony, that's kind of cool too. So yeah. I don't know that I really have anything else to plug just at the moment. We're working on a couple little albums here, but they're more so just, people kind of paying us. So yeah. Go visit my schema project for sure. I really want, people to get involved. I don't want people to be afraid of it. I want people to, feel a part of it, and do more collaborative stuff like this within it. I love that aspect of sharing perspectives by creating something with someone else. So anyway.
Yeah. And I'm Santiago Ramones, and you can find all the things that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com, where you can find this podcast and a link to my SoundCloud, and you can also contact me there. So I always end the podcast with my bit of advice, which is my 3 things, which I always say. Love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong. Thanks for listening. Bye.